Pilots and space enthusiasts watched with rapt attention as the world's most powerful rocket thundered into space this week. And with the SpaceX Falcon Heavy launch, sending humans to Mars might just become a reality. The Falcon lifted off from the same launch pad that sent men to the moon. And if Elon Musk achieves his dreams, this rocket will send space tourists around the moon, then build a habitat on the moon, and ultimately ferry humans to Mars. The Falcon Heavy isn't the biggest rocket ever. That honor falls to the Saturn V. The Falcon Heavy can boost about 19 tons into space. That's 1/3 of what the Saturn could do. But get this, the Saturn cost over $1 billion per launch and no reusable parts. A Falcon Heavy launch costs about $90 million, and most of the rocket can be used again. So joining us now is a man who's been reporting on space and science for more than 30 years. Miles O'Brien is a science correspondent for PBS NewsHour and also a producer for Nova. So welcome, Miles. So, hey, big rocket, big deal, huh?
You know, Tom, it caught me by surprise. I didn't go to Florida. I was busy with some other assignments. I really feel like I missed out on something. That moment when they lit the candles on that, 5 million pounds of thrust. That was an intense emotional moment, and I found myself welling up with tears, and I couldn't quite explain it. Some of it is the nostalgia for Apollo, and of course for me, mostly the shuttle program. But some of it is the pure excitement and thrill of space exploration and seeing it move into this phase. For those of us who've waited for so many years to think about someday, moving beyond low Earth orbit, it was really a moment to remember.
Right. It seemed to really have captured like all of America. I mean, because if you look at the people who were at the Cape, it was almost like the 60s. When we remember when Apollo was going up, there were young people there, there were old people there, and it was just everybody was having a great time.
Yes, it's Woodstock without the acid. It's an interesting group of people, right? I mean, it's put it this way. Space is one of the few things that can bring us together in a positive way, and that's one of the reasons I'm drawn to covering stories about space and, for that matter, aviation. It literally and figuratively lifts us up, and there aren't many stories in the journalistic realm that do that. There are lots of things that we focus on together that are very negative. Space exploration gives us a chance to gather together at the communal hearth, as it were, and celebrate our accomplishments as human beings, and that's a rare moment when you think about it.
Right. So this Falcon Heavy is 27 engines propelling this thing. So from a SpaceX standpoint, what's next? Where do they go from here?
Well, Elon Musk is headed to Mars, and that's his goal. He wants to colonize Mars, and a lot of people who a few years ago would have said, "Well, that sounds like a crazy notion," are not saying that anymore. I mean, he is for real. He has gone in a very systematic way, methodically, and with incredible attention to detail, getting to this point. And it's very difficult when you look at NASA versus this endeavor and some of the other ones, Blue Origin, funded by Jeff Bezos, among them. It's very difficult to look at those private enterprises and not say, wait a minute, these guys got the inside shot to get to Mars before NASA, because NASA has a much more expensive vehicle that's going to fly many fewer times, that's kind of bound up in all the government bureaucratic red tape that is a part of a federal agency, which makes them pretty slow to respond. And they also, frankly, they don't have support from Congress or for that matter, at the White House. So I think private enterprise is going to get us to Mars.
Right. So I got to ask about the Roadster, the Tesla Roadster. They launched into orbit, into a big orbit around the sun and Mars and everywhere else, it seems like. What do you think?
In advance, I thought that sounded kind of cheesy and stupid, and yet every time I look at the feed, I smile because I see that dummy with his arm out, and the "Don't Panic," which is reference to Hitchhiker's Guide, and Bowie playing, and this thing is going to orbit in a hugely elliptical orbit around the sun for about 1 billion years, which I believe is beyond the time of the registration. So it might get pulled over at some point, and but it is certainly the fastest car ever.
And it is fun to see somebody having some fun in space. It's pretty serious business, a lot of safety risks and all that sort of thing, and to just have some fun with it was great to watch.
Yeah, Tom, watching their feed, capturing the enthusiasm of that group, hearing the cheers from Mission Control in Hawthorne, California, and then looking at those 20-something faces all in the crowd there, right, jumping up and down, enthused. Really, that was part of the emotional moment for me. We forget that we went to the moon. Apollo was successful on the backs and through the minds of 20-somethings. This is just their grandkids who are doing another generation of that work. They're carrying the fire, and it's really inspiring to me to see young people having that enthusiasm for space exploration.
All right, Miles, thanks so much for sharing your expertise. We really appreciate it. I had a chance to tour the SpaceX factory next to the Hawthorne Airport in LA last month. SpaceX is completely vertically integrated with raw materials coming in one end of the World War II Boeing factory, rockets ready to launch out the other. So when you hear them tell it, the idea of habitats on Mars doesn't sound all that far-fetched.